The road was a long, black ribbon unfurling into an endless night. Rain lashed against my windshield, each drop a tiny fist drumming a frantic rhythm. My headlights cut a weak path through the darkness, illuminating just enough of the deserted highway to make me feel even more isolated. Exhaustion was a heavy blanket, threatening to pull me under. That's when I saw it. A flickering neon sign that read, "The Sleepy Hollow Inn," its letters buzzing like a dying insect. It wasn't just a hotel, it was a beacon in the storm. Pulling into the gravel lot, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The building was old, a two-story structure that looked like it had been standing since the road was first paved. It had character, I told myself, trying to ignore the way the shadows clung to its eaves. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old wood, dust, and something else. Something I couldn't quite place. A stooped, elderly man with eyes that seemed to hold a century of secrets stood behind the check-in counter. He didn't smile, just pushed a tarnished brass key across the worn wood. "Room 13, he rasped, his voice like gravel. "Top of the stairs, end of the hall." The staircase creaked under my weight, each step a groan of protest. The hallway was long and dim, lined with doors that looked identical, their paint peeling in the humid air. My room, number 13, was at the very end, just as he'd said. The moment I stepped inside, a chill, unrelated to the storm outside, traced its way down my spine. The room was simple, a bed, a small desk, and a wardrobe with a large ornate mirror on its door. It was clean, but it felt unoccupied, like it had been waiting for a very, very long time. I dropped my bag and sank onto the bed, the spring sighing beneath me. That's when I first heard it. A faint whisper, like wind whistling through a keyhole, but there was no wind in the room. I sat up, listening. The sound was gone. I must be more tired than I thought. Shaking it off, I walked over to the bathroom to splash some water on my face. As I looked up into the medicine cabinet mirror, my heart skipped a beat. For a split second, the reflection wasn't mine. It was a man, gaunt and pale, with eyes wide with terror. I blinked, and he was gone. Just me, my face pale, my own eyes wide. My hands were shaking. It was a trick of the light, the fatigue playing with my mind. It had to be. Back in the main room, I tried to ignore the growing unease. I decided to unpack, hoping the simple task would ground me. As I opened the wardrobe, I glanced at the mirror on its door. This time the reflection was different again. It was a woman, her hair disheveled, her mouth open in a silent scream. I slammed the wardrobe shut, my breath catching in my throat. Every reflective surface was showing me something else, a different terrified face. The whispers started again, louder now, weaving through the room, unintelligible but filled with a palpable sense of dread. The floorboards above me began to creak, a heavy, rhythmic pacing. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like someone was dragging something heavy. Then a child's laughter, high and chilling, echoed from the hallway, followed by a sudden, abrupt silence. I couldn't stay in that room another second. My rational mind was screaming at me to get out, to drive away, to not look back. I burst out of the room and practically flew down the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. The old manager was still at the desk, polishing a glass with a discolored rag, as if he hadn't moved an inch. He looked up Gumeg slowly, his expression unchanging. "Is there a problem, sir?" he asked, his voice still a dry rasp. "The noises," I gasped, leaning on the counter to steady myself. "The whispering, the pacing upstairs. There are people in my room, in the mirrors." The manager stopped polishing the glass. He placed it down on the counter with a soft click. The silence that followed was heavier than any of the sounds I'd heard upstairs. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in his ancient eyes. It wasn't surprise. It was pity. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush that sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. "Son," he said, his gaze unwavering. "There's no one else in the hotel tonight. It's just you and me." "But room 13, I insisted, my voice cracking. "The room you gave me. Who was in there before? What happened in that room?" The old man froze. The rag in his hand went still. He stared at me, his face turning a shade paler, his lips a thin white line. A deep, unsettling fear bloomed in his eyes, a fear that mirrored what I'd seen in the reflections. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his wrinkled throat. "Room 13, he finally whispered, his voice barely audible. We don't have a room 13. This hotel only has 12 rooms." My blood ran cold. I fumbled in my pocket, my fingers closing around the cold, heavy brass key. I pulled it out and slammed it onto the counter. The number, tarnished but unmistakable, was engraved into the metal. 13. The manager stared at the key as if it were a venomous snake. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He looked from the key to my face, and then past me, towards the dark, creaking staircase. He didn't have to say another word. I understood. I wasn't just a guest who had been given the wrong room. I was a guest who shouldn't have been there at all. The whispers, the faces, the pacing. They weren't the previous occupants. They were the welcome party. And the room at the end of the hall, the one that didn't exist, was waiting for its newest permanent resident. I turned and ran, not daring to look back, the old man's terrified gasp echoing behind me, a sound that was quickly drowned out by the renewed sound of a child's laughter from the top of the stairs. Thank you so much for joining me on this terrifying journey into the Sleepy Hollow Inn. If this story sent a shiver down your spine, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the dark. And let me know in the comments below, would you have stayed the night? Until next time, stay safe, and maybe check the room number twice.